Okay, so I wanted to share my project with everyone, and basically it's replacing an existing light fixture that you would have at your house or your condo. And it's an existing fixture, and I went to Home Depot. Picked out my light fixture, new LED bulb, and I'm going to use tools that you typically have around your house. You're not necessarily in your toolbox, but a couple of things that you'll need. I made took a couple of pictures, and you guys can take a look at that. And I'm going to show you exactly where the light fixture is and kind of a step-by-step on how to do it. If you're at home or do it yourself, or you don't have any handyman, I can show you how to at least change a light fixture. All right. So here are the parts and pieces. You can see some basic tools that you're going to need. Light fixture and bulb. This was picked up at home or Lowe's. And then we'll make our way over to the light fixture itself. And you can see that's the location. Here is the switch. I've already checked the switch. Went through the switch, changed it, and made sure that it wasn't the switch that was bad. Yeah. Okay, so it's important to make sure that you have the correct ladder for what you're doing. We have extremely high ceilings, close to 10, actually 12 feet tall, maybe 11. And also, it's always good to bring in a flashlight when you're assessing or trying to understand the light fixture. Most light fixtures are installed in two different ways. Either, and this goes for the beauty cap, it's either screwed on or the fixture is placed up there with a tightening nut that actually it puts pressure and tension on that rod and holds up the beauty cap. That's if you don't see any mechanical nuts or screws or bolt heads. If you don't see any nuts or screw heads and it's not tension, typically it means that it's screwed on to the ceiling. The problem with that, if you're going to change light fixtures, you're probably going to have to do touch-up paint around this area here. So it's a good idea to pick up a couple of paint sponges to do touch-up paint when you change out the light fixture. Okay, so you can see here now the light fixture. There is a tensioning rod, which makes it a lot easier. And then also close up to where there are no bolts. But you do have a fire sprinkler head and a smoke detector. This is only a smoke detector. It is not a heat detector. There are two different types. So that's the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and first off is remove the bulb. You always want to save the bulb and save the parts and pieces that you want to save, or take them off and then put them down in a safe place. Okay, what I discovered with some of these fixtures, and they're so far up in the ceiling, is that there is a little tightening screw here for the beauty cap. And what that means is as soon as I loosen up that screw, the beauty cap should be able to slide down, and it'll expose the mounting nuts or bolts or screws into the junction box or the mounting plate. And then I should also be able to unscrew the wire nuts. Now I've made sure that power is turned off to the fixture. I'm confident in making sure that it was done. Sometimes you need to test the wires just to make sure that they're not live. Okay, as I mentioned, I was able to remove the screw, and it ended up being an Allen head. And so it's always good to make sure that you have, again, spare tools, or at least a standard set of Allen wrenches. This is what we have here. I was able to pull down the wires or the beauty plate, and now you can see what I was talking about. I've exposed the wires And this is an older building, and it looks like I can see what the issue is here. I'll take a look at this, and this type of wiring means that it's an older fixture, and it's a dimmable fixture, which always fails. But there looks to be a loose nut there. All right, more to come. Okay, so I'm trying to do this and hold my phone at the same time. You can see that the wires attached to this bar, I don't want to call it a bus bar, but it's kind of like a mending bar. The hot and neutral wires come in here and you tighten down those screws. Now that comes with the Italian type of light fixtures, and you can see that the wires go down all the way into the light fixture. These are really small wires, and so I have a feeling that it's just not as efficient in pushing the power into the actual fixture itself. Right here is the locking mechanism into the pole. The wires go down there, travels all the way down to the light fixture itself. I'm going to remove this attachment. I might have to remove this attachment here. I might have to remove the actual anchor bar, which are typically, you can see there are two flathead bolts. I should be able to take off the whole entire fixture. I will have to use that and save this part, the anchoring bar, for the other light fixture that I'm going to be putting up. Hot, you can see that. Solid, neutral, solid. These type of wires that come with these fixtures are typically strand, which is not the best for light fixtures, and that's the reason why we're replacing this guy here. Okay, so I came back up here and I just wanted to show you guys touching the wires, make sure nothing's live. It does look like there is a grounding wire, which is fantastic. But this is a pretty typical setup for a light fixture. This is the residue that's left over from the light fixture. I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off. It should be able to be cleaned or cleanable. I recommend warm or hot water with a little bit of dish soap or hand soap, and it usually cleans it off pretty quick. Alright, so I wanted to show you the light fixture that I picked up from Lowe's. It's pretty standard. This is a pendant with a clear wire. They didn't have white. I guess that's fine. Nobody's going to be really up close looking at it. It has a threading nut here. That's going to hold in the actual light fixture, the shade portion of it. This part you actually don't need. If you had a smaller light bulb that was coming down with the actual socket, that's where it would fit here. This is an adapter. This screws off, and we need the larger hole that will fit this. And it's usually this can thread right into the light fixture, which this threads into it. And then this locking nut will also add additional support to the fixture itself. This is not terribly that heavy, but still you want the support. You have your chrome beauty cap, as one that we also removed earlier. And you can see that this light fixture does have the ground, a bar in it in itself, which is fantastic. The thing that I don't like, and a lot of fixtures are doing this, it has threaded aluminum on it, which is really bad. You typically want to go with copper, but it's a cheaper fixture, and you typically don't want to go copper to aluminum, but that's what I have, and I don't necessarily have the, you can actually have a aluminum type of gel that helps it from corroding, but I don't have that. Maybe down the road I'll put it on there, but most likely I won't. This is pretty typical what comes in the bag. Wire nuts, they're always orange. I think that's the cheapest and easiest color. I think it's fine because you can actually spot the orange when you're doing your work if it's really dark. And then also these are the nuts, or sorry, the bolts that attach this bar to the junction box. These are always 99% of the time the same thread, and I don't know what coarse or cut thread it is, but this will mount this bar to the existing junction box that we have up there for our light fixture project. Okay, something that I wanted to point out to you is that this actual light fixture, I think what they mentioned was 63 inches long. So that means that I'm going to have to modify it and cut it to the correct length. I'm going to use my existing light fixture to kind of give my measurements. That's where these tools really come in. You have your wire cutters and then also needle nose. But for the most part, I'm going to have to do some trimming and shorten this guy up. Okay, one thing that I did want to mention that I didn't catch at the very end when I cut it, or I caught it right when after I cut it, was that this wire here, the original wires that the packaging comes with, has this black indicator on these two wires. That black indicator indicates that that's the hot lead. And so when after I cut my wire, I basically had to go back and trace where that wire, how it was fed down. And what I did was I took a Sharpie and I traced down the wire and I marked it. And when I got to a point where I was confident and kept moving on, I marked it black, fed all the way through till the very end. And then I marked it, I don't know if you can see that, with the black Sharpie. And then that led me to identify which of these wires is the actual hot. And that's important because if you don't polarize, I think I'm using that term correctly, if you don't connect the wires to the hot and neutral, you're actually going to have issues down the road, because this fixture is, light fixtures are created where one lead is entering in on the correct side and the other is on the hot side, and that actually finds its way into the LED bulb or any kind of bulb. And with a $10 bulb, you want to make sure it's done correctly. All right, so here is the end product of stripping a wire, trimming it down from the main, the extra length. These are the insulation around the wire itself. If you take your wire cutters, take your time, make it go around a couple of times around the insulation, you should be able to cut just the insulation, pull right off. You want to leave as much of the wire as you can. Sometimes with really sharp needle or wire cutters, they'll cut right through it if you're not careful. They do have a special tool that will cut this, meaning that there's a notch in the actual wire cutters that leaves the wire, space for the wire, and just cuts the insulation. But if you don't have it, you can complete that task by just using that wire cutter. Now the interesting thing is that this finish ring cap actually has these screws on the end, and so when you tighten up this nut for the wire, you're actually not going to have enough room for the wire to get mounted to the fixture itself and then being able to slide this up. So I have to remove these two screws. That'll slide this, or separate the cap from the mending or anchor bar. I'll attach the anchor bar. I'll be able to slide the wire through here. And then after I make the connections through, I'll have to fish this through, slide up this plate, and then attach it at the bottom with that metal securing nut itself. It's kind of a little awkward way of doing it, but all light fixtures are going to be different in the way that they're installed. The important part is making sure you have a good connection where you're hot and neutral and your ground. And what I did was I put a little tape on here just to remind me that this is the hot lead. Okay, I wanted to show you how this is all wired up. Again, I had my mark of the plastic or the tape to the hot lead, which connects to my hot wire nut, and then my neutral wire nut, and then also the grounding wire that's attached up there. There was a grounding wire that was originally stuffed up into the box. Now this makes it awkward is because now all of the tension of the light fixture, believe it or not, is on the wire itself. And I'm going to be using this nut again to hold it up. I thought about wrapping the wire around the anchoring plate, but I didn't want to kind of get into using that method, only because if you do wrap it around, there's a chance that the metal will actually cut through the insulation and into the wire itself. Now that's probably unlikely, but again, I didn't want to take that chance. I'm going to rely on, again, this metal nut that's provided to use the strength of it to hold up the light fixture. And again, it's the shade that is actually pretty light, so it's not that bad, might not be that big of a concern. It's a little tricky now because I have to stuff all the wiring up, and then I have to put this plate back on, plate cover, and then I have to screw in the 2 screws on the side, which is a little tricky. The best thing to do is support the light fixture and socket with the ladder, but I'm not doing that because it means going up and down on a 12-foot tall ceiling. But I'll show you after I'm done putting all of it together. All right, so now I've pretty much wired everything correctly that I mentioned. I put the fixture on, the shade, LED light bulb. I've double checked everything, kind of. And then I went ahead and turned on the power or the breaker, and there you go, light fixture installed. Now I will have to do a little bit of painting like what I mentioned around the top there. You really can't see it, it bugs me, but I don't know if I'm going to leave it or I'm actually going to paint it. It is 12 feet up in the air. So that's pretty much it, installing a light fixture. One that's bad, European, with really terrible wiring. The interesting thing, and I'll show you guys, is that I didn't even use the instructions. The overall light fixture itself isn't that bad. It does, you have to read what you're getting. These are pretty typical when you buy them at Lowe's or whatever. One thing that they didn't show you in here that you probably would need is when you trim the wire, is you're going to need a blade like this, and that's to cut the insulation. When you're having to trim this, you're going to have to cut the outer insulation to separate, to expose the inside wires. But that is it. Filming and taking, the light fixture, installing it, probably would take somebody that knows enough, do-it-yourselfer, probably less than an hour. I'd probably say between 30 minutes and 45 minutes. But the one thing you gotta remember when you do stuff like this is take your time, and that's it complete. Thanks a lot.